I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Corey. Corey, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, beautiful people. My name is Corey with a K.
Hey.
And and I am a professor of criminology and of Africana Studies at Northeastern University in Boston. And more importantly, just a black dude trying to make it in this world.
Corey and I met in South Africa. I was on my Fulbright, and he was on his Fulbright, but he is a researcher. His was really cool. We ended up meeting in Joburg with all these other Fulbrighters, and I was not having a good day, and I really didn't want to meet any Fulbrighters. And then when we get to the group, you also look like you didn't have a great day. So I think this is why we connected, out of just, I don't want to be here, but I want to be polite. And from then, we just had such a great day.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was, I definitely, I don't know if my day was going bad, but it was definitely like, I'm just here to be polite. I really don't care to be here. But then I saw you and we started talking. I was like, finally, a breath of fresh air and someone who's black who understands what I'm saying. And we could connect. That was a joyous moment of my Fulbright experience.
Yes, me too. So what type of research were you doing on your Fulbright?
Ooh, great question. I was going to the archives in various places in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and really trying to understand how Black people during apartheid were policed around past laws, and trying to understand how race, space, and time really get constructed in different ways when it comes to Blackness moving through this world. So that's like going to South Africa was the start of that research.
And why study that project? Why that area?
Yeah, it was like I went to South Africa one time before in 2016. I lived there for about 8 months when I was in corporate America, my old days, and then my previous life more so. And I was policed in ways that were similar to being policed in the US, where I was pulled over. I was driving like a nice rental car, not by choice, but because I didn't know how to drive a manual car at that time. So all the automatic cars were kind of high class.
Yep.
And the company, it was on a company's dime, and I would get pulled over 3 in the morning, 12, just various times, and asked for a bribe or just hassled for half an hour before I can continue on my way. So it made me think about how were Black people stopped during apartheid, and what were their experiences like?
From that world, like, how did you go from corporate America to becoming this professor?
It's very interesting because my background is in computer science. I went to Syracuse University, and when I started working for General Electric, there was this IT program where you do these rotational roles. So every 6 months, you're in a new role. And I wound up in South Africa. Not wound up. I asked my manager for every 2 weeks for a year, and he got annoyed until he sent me to South Africa.
You said that's where I want to
He
go
told
for vacation, or because it was a part of the, when they give you the list of places that are everywhere. Google has offices all over the place, and people are like, oh, I just need to go there so I can do work in a different office. Was it that type?
Yeah, it was like that because it was like there's not that many people in the rotation program. Like my cohort had 5 people, and I was one of 2 Black folks, and the only one interested even in South Africa. So I'm like, come on, where we at? So that was to get out the country and stay somewhere for a long time and really just get to the motherland. And that was my first time getting to the continent. When I was there, I think the thing that really pushed me out of corporate America and into academia was there was a shipping container, and we were trying to put computers into the shipping container for this poor Black neighborhood in the suburb of Johannesburg. And we had the computers, we had the shipping container, everything was there, but the company would just not set it up. And they kept making excuses about why not. And it just kept boggling my mind, like, why in a country that is predominantly Black, we're not able to help Black youth who want to have access to the internet? And it just had my mind kind of thinking about, wow, I'm in this corporation that's not really making an impact. So how else can I make an impact? Or how else can I even think about some of these questions around race, even in a country that's predominantly Black? So that kind of made me disillusioned about corporate America and made me start to ask me questions about race and access that I never thought about before.
But why professorship? Why sociology? People with that would have maybe decided to volunteer or, pick up a hobby. You just was like, I'm leaving this world and I'm gonna think about these questions.
I think South Africa changed me in 2016 into a whole other person. And at the same time, when I was in South Africa, my brother got locked up. My eldest brother got locked up. And to me, I was going back and forth to the U.S. to renew my visa. So I'll go back, and I'm sitting in the courtroom, and I watched his lawyer play, I think it was called Farmville, that game on Facebook years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is he on the tablet playing Farmville and we losing this case? And it didn't make sense to me. So I became disillusioned at work, and then I was like disillusioned with the criminal legal system in the U.S. So then just made me start asking questions. And I was like, I'm bored at work because I ain't doing nothing. Like, they got me just managing people from all over the world and not really doing actual work, which we just pimp our stuff off to other places when it comes to like tech and other things in the U.S. So I got bored and disillusioned. I was like, you know what? Let me go answer these questions. And at the time, there's a dude, Dr. Akeem Hamilton, who was doing Peace Corps, Black dude. And I bumped into him, and he just kind of exposed me to all these Peace Corps folks. So I applied to Peace Corps, did not get in, which is probably for the better. So I was like, I'm going to just go somewhere and read and be in the community and read for 2 years and come back as a genius like Malcolm X. Some weird train of thought. That did not work. So now I'm in South Africa, man. I just quit my job, and now I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing in my life. And I just started looking at different disciplines that crossed my mind. And I remember taking a sociology class with my first Black professor at Syracuse. And I was like, oh yeah, that was interesting. So let me look into this. So I started applying for programs in 2016 in South Africa and doing a GRE from there.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join
The Chair.
community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on.
The Chair.
We got you.
No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
That's wild. Yeah, I also applied to the Peace Corps and also did not get in.
What?
Yeah, I applied right after grad school from when I was at UCLA. I applied for a program in South Africa, surprisingly.
Mm.
And they said, "No, ma'am, sorry." And I was like, "Oh, damn. Okay, guess Peace Corps life isn't for me either." So I get it, like thinking, Peace Corps is gonna be able to solve it, And you're like, "Oh, not today."
It's interesting where it's like white folks are telling me I can't go to an African nation. I said, what? Y'all told me no? I said, okay. But I met at least 40 Peace Corps volunteers from all over the continent while I was in South Africa, just because of the networking that I was in. So I'm like, all these white folks are able to come to the continent and do work that really isn't sustainable and doesn't have a plan of continuity, which I'm witnessing in all these different countries I was visiting and meeting Peace Corps folks. And I was like, damn, now I'm a person of African descent and I'm not able to come back here and try to contribute in ways that are helpful. So that was like, okay, I need to actually pivot and think about something else.
Yeah, I studied abroad. The first time I went to the continent, I studied abroad in Tanzania, East Africa. And out of my group, I was the only black person. And I said,
wow,
this is wild. How in my little study abroad group, I am still the only black person going to the continent. And I was always assumed to be their tour guide. So I was like, oh, wait, no. So it became this really interesting moment where even though I was there to do, the whole point was to look into environmental sciences and biology and also look into anthropology. We were looking into archaeology, medicinal anthropology, linguistic anthropology, culture. We were hitting everything. But because I was mistaken so often, it became like I was the research. The Messiah was like, hey, oh, you're not one of us? Who are you? But you're like us. So it was always this back and forth. So it became being like, hey, American. And they're like, white people, black people live in America? You sure black people live in America? I'm like, yep. Because then when I was speaking in Swahili, they'd be like, that accent is weird. And I was like, God damn it. So I'm learning the language and they still know. Like, I remember I was like wearing all the traditional attire one day and I was like getting off the bus and a Tanzanian yells, "You're not from here," just super loud. And so I stop and he goes, "Where are you from?" And I go, "America." He was like, "Yeah, you walk like an American." What does that mean? And he said, Americans walk like they own things. They own the street. They own the space. And he was like, also, you're a woman. He was like, women don't walk with so much attention. This is interesting. I remember also, like, when I started walking faster, people were like, stop walking like a white person. That was also yelled at me. And then I started noticing how white people will walk very fast through when we were in town and all these places. And I'm like, yeah, the speed of white people walking, American stances. So they knew when we Americans were in the space just based on how we stood. And so now I'm having that conversation, and also just the confusion of who I was as a black person. Because then they thought, well, you can't be American. American was never the first guess. It was, oh, you're from Mozambique. I'd never been at that time. So I was like, I don't know what Mozambican people portray. And one guy said, it's your spirit. You have a free spirit. Mozambicans have free spirit. And I was like, that's beautiful, you know? So it was like all these moments for me. So then it became me learning about what blackness, American blackness, looked like and that's what drew me into anthropology, sociology. Oh, Instead of me studying them, they were studying me. So we were studying each other.
Right. That's so fascinating because the thing about the velocity in which somebody is moving, you can just tell where they're from or that they think that they own a street. I'm like, that's a whole study within itself. So I always think about ethnographers and folks who are qualitative and who observe. And so, no, actually, this isn't something new. You have to always cite these folks who come up with these theories and terms. I'm like, folks have been observing folks for. So the thing that we have to cite these folks because we sat in a barbershop and watched some folks talk for a while and then did some interviews. Now we have to go cite some white person that cited that named this thing. So that's interesting. There's so many things to unpack there. I just kind of wonder, how did you feel being in that space to be labeled as a tour guide, to be seen as not from there, but not assumed American, and being in Tanzania or being the first time on that continent? How did that feel in your body?
There's a tattoo across my back because of the experience that I had in Tanzania. So when they figured out that I was a Black American, and that's what they would call me, they're like, oh, the Black American, they would say, Wewe ni kama sisi, which means you are like us. And it was a particular being like, you are like us, but you are not the same, but you are similar to us. Because especially in the sun, I'm already dark chocolate. I was getting really dark. And so they're like, yeah, you're just like us, And for me, I remember because we had to sleep in the Tarangire National Park, right? So we were tenting there, and we were basically with the community that would cook for us. We would go out and talk to the Maasai tribe and the families together. And the cook one day told me to come to the kitchen. And I would always go to the kitchen anyway. I'm talking to everybody, right? Just to know that, hey, I see you. We're all here. I'm thankful for what you do. And he sat me down and he said, I want you to know that you are family. He was like, you are family now. It wasn't like a question. He was just like, I'm just telling you this so you know. And then that was the end of our conversation. And then he went back to cooking. And I think about that moment a lot because I felt like it kept happening when we were just like talking to different communities. I happened to be with a bunch of Tanzanian women and they were weaving baskets. I don't know how to weave a basket, right? So I'm sitting there asking them how to do this. What does this mean? And so they're asking me questions. How did you end up in America, right? So I'm trying to explain Atlantic slave trade really fast. Why are you not married? I'm trying to explain feminism really quickly, right? And education and higher ed. I'm trying to do all these things. And for like 2 hours, it was just a back and forth. And I think after those moments, they would give me something. So I have anklets. I would get a bracelet just to show that we were connected.
Wow.
And I thought that was the most beautiful thing. So yeah, it was a little frustrating at the beginning. Man, I don't have all the words to describe how happy I am to see people who look like me. But then at the same time, I was able to be a part, show that we are similar and not the same. And it happened everywhere I went. When I came back to South Africa, it happened when I was in South Africa. When I went to Egypt and we kept going further south, people would yell out on the street, hey, cousin, how are you? Everywhere. Hey, cousin. The darker they got, they would just keep yelling at me across the street. And at first I was like, who are they talking to? And then a kid came up to me and tapped me on my shoulder and said, hey, cousin. And I was like, oh, they've been talking to me this entire time. So everywhere I went to a different country in Africa, it was that same connection, even if they didn't know me.
I've just been smiling this whole time. I think that's so beautiful. And I have goosebumps.
No, like the one in South Africa, in South Africa, they have dating sites or whatever. So I was like on a dating site. And so I ended up going on a date with this Nigerian in South Africa. And he was just talking, hey, I didn't know you were American. I would have basically swiped left. And I was like, ooh, okay, my feelings are hurt. But he was like, Americans don't see us. And he said to me, in Nigeria, I was taught that Black Americans are the cousins we lost. And so he said, anytime I see Black Americans, I want them to know that I love them. Oh, And if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. You know, I met this guy like 5 minutes ago, but that intensity was there that I was like, okay. And I think about how history is taught in America in schools. That intensity doesn't really, you don't feel that intensity unless you have the teacher who is telling you that history can be that intense, that feeling.
That's right. When I think about, it's funny. I had an interesting experience in Nigeria because I go to Nigeria back and forth for spiritual purposes. I practice Ifa, and in one instance, and I'm just saying this generally, in one instance, it's like, hey, you're a cousin, long lost family member, you're just like us. On the other side, and I think this is really because of capitalism and colonialism and what have you that has interrupted like Africa. And on the other side, it was like I was called a Oyimbo or like a stray cat or this just like a foreigner who's like this like stray cat. That's the best way I could put it. And I was like, wow.
Damn.
And I didn't even say anything. I'm just like standing still. I wasn't even speaking. And I got called that. And someone else heard it and was like, oh no, we don't do that here. And I was like, wow, this is interesting because I don't know, being Black American, to use a Tanzanian phrase, is that I feel like I'm also searching for lost cousins on the other side of the Atlantic. So there's like these moments of you're just like us or similar to us and we're family. And then there's other moments of like rejection, like, oh, you're nothing like us.
Damn.
Like, just give me $1. And it's wow, it's just interesting to have those two kind of those two experiences juxtaposed against each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. When I moved to China, I had zero thought that I would find any Black people, right? I thought wherever I was, there may be a sprinkle, and hopefully I can come across them. When I found out there was a train stop called Xiaobei, and that's where all the Black people were hanging out. It was mostly West Africans doing a lot of trade, or because Guangzhou is like a really big port city. So you had East Africans, you had West Africans just doing a lot of trade there. And so when I got off the stop, I was like, oh, word, there are a whole bunch of Africans here speaking Chinese, specifically Mandarin. Some were speaking Cantonese. When I mean they're doing business, they're doing business. And so I'm going, just talking, just learning. And I was having a conversation with a guy from, it was like a bunch of us. It was a guy from Ethiopia. It was a guy from Sierra Leone. And I believe there was a Nigerian there and a couple others. And we were talking about what it was like. And we were all dark skinned too. So that was also a different dynamic, right? We were all talking about what it meant to be Black in Guangzhou, China. And we were talking about just the struggles, if we had a language barrier, because I was learning Chinese and they were already fluent in it. So that also created a different dynamic. They said to me, every African agreed as they looked at me, they said, Dreme, you have an easier experience than us because you are American. They said they will not bother you as much as they will bother us because of your passport. They were like, I wish I had your passport. They said that makes you different than us. I couldn't argue with them because there was one moment where I had to go to the law, to like the police for support. And they were like, bring your passport. And I had to bring my passport. And instead of me like reporting my crime, being like, hey, this Chinese man was trying to hurt me and all this stuff in a taxi situation, the first 20 minutes is they didn't truly believe that I was American. So they spent 20 minutes just going through my passport. And in my passport, I have China doesn't play with their visas. So I had 6 pages of visas. And then I had my Tanzanian visa from school. I had all these other stamps from all this other stuff that I was doing. Is this you? Are you sure this is you? Is this your passport? How did you get this passport? These were the questions that were asked. This is what they mean. This is what they meant when they were saying that. It wasn't like an offense. It was just, this is the reality here. And your Americanness will trump your Blackness in certain situations.
Yeah, like they definitely have a point. And it's interesting because I always like making the distinction that it's like, yeah, that Americanness in some cases are more, gives us an advantage, but that advantage is based on like empire and like the US and its like military and economic influence. So it's not like we out here just keying, as I was saying, just having a grand old time. It's like we just happen to have this passport, born in this circumstance, based on that gives us undue privilege based on these like imperial connections that the US has around the world. Yeah, they do have a point. That's interesting. I feel like there's a lot. You keep bringing up stories where I'm like, wow, that's something to study. That's something that's, we think about people traveling. My research is really about Black people in motion and them moving through the world as a means of self-actualization. And then what happens when they're policed? And I argue that when they're policed, that's a moment where the category human is contested, where we see that Blackness becomes something that's non-human, that actually allows other people to become human or have the potential to be human. So this case of moving through China and being questioned like, oh, this isn't your passport, and being attacked by the dude in the taxi or what have you, these are just kind of moments that would kind of lean towards my research. So just opened my eyes a little bit and the light bulb going up. Like, wait a minute, there's something to talk about here.
Come on, professor. You're like, let me get my notebook. Let me get the notebook.
Wait a minute. If this wasn't recorded, I hear all these pen scratching in the background. I was like, trying to follow up on. I'm gonna ask this later.
So in the like classes you teach today, what keeps you teaching so much? What, like when you think about that passion and that love that you were missing in corporate America, what does it feel like now as a professor?
It's in full transparency, like my first full like class alone and is this fall. And my experiences have been really in the community, because my research was with a home service provider and an abolitionist org in the west coast of the US. So a lot of my teaching and facilitating happened through organizing. And that taught me about interdependence and being able to break down these academic terms into like layman's terms, but also realizing that the academics got it from the community to begin with. So it was just going to community to make sure like, hey, remember what y'all said? Remember the knowledge that you produced? And let's talk about this and how we could better our lives. So to me, what kind of pushes me forward and carries me through is that I always think about my classroom as a space of building community. And I'm going to tell my students that on the first class, like this class is primarily about us building community together. The content and subject, you could get that from anywhere. It's like at this point, if you're at Northeastern, you can read somewhat. You can read and comprehend something. So you can go to all these books and just read them yourselves. But I think my role as a professor is just to facilitate the knowledge and say, hey, let's think about some questions that you may not have asked yourself, that I happen to have learned from my elders and who have asked these questions before me. And I'm just kind of pitching these questions to them. But also, in addition to that and like the aspect of building community, I was on an interview at the school in the Southwest US. And there's this older dude who had all these teaching awards. So I'm like, hey man, we only had 15 minutes. It was a one-on-one. I said, hey man, how do you have all these awards? I see grad students running in and out of your class, your office all day laughing. I'm like, how do you have these awards? And he looked at me and he said, hey, my teaching philosophy is love. And it was that simple. And he said, I tell my students that. So I've taken that, changed my life really. So between building community in the classroom and then focusing on love, that's my aim in the classroom. That's what brings me into the classroom. And then lastly, like you, I'm a storyteller and I love stories. I love hearing stories. I used to hear like African stories when I was a kid at this magnet school I went to. I just love stories. And to me, I think the classroom is a place of how do we hear these stories from others and how we tell these stories, but now connect these stories to a larger history. And that's usually what my research is about and what my writing is about.
If you happen to meet new people, Black people who decide that they're like, yeah, I want to be a professor, what would be the 3 pieces of advice you would give them?
That's a great question. The first advice, I'd be like, are you sure? Like, I'd be like, oh no, you should run away. You could do something else. Because I feel like I kind of found myself on this path I never had a definitive moment say, I'm going to go be an educator. It was kind of, I found myself on this path. It was like, oh, look, this is interesting here. But the first piece of advice I would give is ask yourself to talk to people to understand what it means to be a professor. Because I think there's a lot of like mystery around professorship that even as I find out day by day, as my job is starting and everything is ramping up as we lead into the fall, is that there are so many hidden gems and just things that I think are structurally meant to keep people who are first gen, low income, what have you, out of the ivory tower. So just kind of, I'll tell people, go learn a little bit more about what it means to be in academia and what the pressures are and what is the outcome or what people expect of you, what the expectations are. The second piece of advice I would say is definitely follow your passions. Always follow the things that make you passionate about being in academia or being a professor. Why do I say that? Is that we have a lot of, as you know, right, we have a lot of leeway in the classroom. So I think there's often times that people are trying to imitate other folks, or say they have to teach a certain way, or just stick to quote unquote whatever the canon is in these quote unquote canonical texts. But to me, the classroom is a space for, just like a painter is expressing themselves on the canvas, like we can express ourselves in the classroom and then create a space or a larger canvas, a communal canvas for everybody in the classroom to express themselves in a way as we learn together. And I think only by following our passions, we're able to do that. And I had a friend show me her syllabus for a class I'm teaching this fall, that she's also going to teach this fall, and hers is all based about families and how they were impacted by incarceration. Same class as mine. Mine's going to be about like racial slavery and colonialism. How's that shape policing today? But hers is all about families. And it was like, we're teaching the same course, the same topics are there, but it's like, what is the expression? Like, what is your kind of flavor? And I think a lot of professors do this, but I think it's a reminder to tell people as you go on this journey from grad school through grad school and doing a PhD, people are going to tell you to write a certain way or talk a certain way. And my advice is like, dump all that. Like when you sit at the laptop, allow your ancestors to write with you and just put that on the page, put those thoughts on the page. And then the third piece of advice I would say is just build community and talk to the people that that you would want to talk to, but then also listen and learn from the people that most folks don't talk to. So to me, I used to be a janitor when I was a kid, had my first like summer job. It wasn't the first job I had in the summer, but probably job 3. I was a janitor for two summers. So to me, I had the experience of being in the role where that person is overlooked all the time. So the same way that you talk to the cook in Tanzania, to me, it's like really important to talk to those folks who are kind of on the outskirts and just listen to what they have to say. You might not agree with them for sure, but just like, what was your experience? Or just go have coffee with folks and talk to folks and just listen and learn and collect their stories and see, okay, what from their stories can impact my day or impact my syllabus or impact the classroom or impact my research, and allow those stories kind of pick and choose from those stories and allow that to kind of guide you going forward. So I think to me, talking to those folks who are overlooked is like one of my gems of life that I've been trying to make a list of.
Yeah.
But those are probably like the top 3.
I like this. I like this list a lot. Well, Corey, thank you so much for sharing your stories in the chair. I truly, truly appreciate you taking the time out to laugh with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's all love, and I appreciate you, fam.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share